I was recently doing some traveling in Cambodia, and at one point I was in a town called Siem Reap, and I wanted to do a day trip to a couple of sites outside of the town. So the sites were about 30 kilometers away, so I hired what's called a tuk-tuk, which is a sort of Southeast Asian taxi. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this before, but it's sort of like a covered wagon pulled by a motor scooter. And they're everywhere in Southeast Asia. They're ubiquitous, and they're very, very inexpensive. So you'll be in a restaurant eating dinner, for example, and there will be tuk-tuk drivers like in the doorway trying to catch your eye to like sign you up for a ride home. And sometimes they're like in the window. So it's very cheap. It's a very accessible way to participate in the tourist economy, basically. So one afternoon, I approached this guy, tuk-tuk driver, and say, I'd like to do this trip. And he says, great, $30. And this is actually a really good price because it's about an hour to get to the first site, and then he just hangs around while I explore, and then it's a half an hour to the next site, and he hangs around again, and then it's an hour all the way back to town. So basically an entire afternoon for $30. This is a good deal. So off we go. We get to the first site, and he says, we need to go here first because this one closes early, and you should only stay about 45 minutes so that we have time to get to the second site. This makes sense to me, so that's what I do, and it's lovely. I have a really good time, and I come back, and there's a problem. And the problem is that my driver has talked to some of the other tuk-tuk drivers, and apparently the next site that I want to go to has been shut down by the police because of snakes. The site it's a riverbed that's apparently carved, and you have to sort of hike in through the woods for about a kilometer to see it, and apparently people have seen snakes, and they called the police, and they've shut it down. And by way of sort of explanation, my driver says that sometimes what happens is villagers, they will steal eggs from a snake's nest to eat, and when the mother snake wakes up, she's angry and goes tear-assing through the village and bites everybody. That's obviously a paraphrase. He didn't say tear-assing. So I don't know a lot about reptile biology or ecology, but I'm pretty sure that story is totally bullshit. So I say, well, we'll just go to the next site and we'll talk to the police and we'll see, and maybe we can make an exception or whatever. And so he looks at me and he's a little bit nervous about this, but okay. So we drive to the next site. And so we get there, and it is indeed closed, but it's not closed because of snakes and police. It's just closed. And it closed a half hour after we left the town. So there was no way we were ever going to be able to see this second site. He basically wasted half of my time by lying to me. So I get angry, right? And I'm yelling at this tuk-tuk driver. And not only that, but I'm doing that thing that English language speakers can do when they're overseas, which is you start talking really fast and using really big words to make the person feel extra stupid. The technical term for this is language that's both pleonastic and sesquipedalian, in case you're wondering. So my revenge, as it were, on this tuk-tuk driver is a kind of rhetorical bludgeoning, which is really effective. He agrees to like half the price for the trip, but it's also totally lame, right, in the scheme of possible revenges. A kind of like I rhetoricked him to death or something. So we're driving back to the town, and I'm feeling kind of embarrassed. He's feeling very like language shame or something, and I start thinking about some other reasons why my revenge on this guy is lame. And the first reason is that it is possible that he just got it wrong. He made a mistake. He thought that the place was going to be open, and then when he discovered it wasn't, he made up this fantastical story about snakes to sort of save face, right? And I used to do this all the time when I was a kid. I would screw up, and I would lie to my parents with this story about something that wasn't my fault. And I'm sure there are people in this room who can identify with this experience. Right on. So if that's true, if that's the case, then I'm hypocritical for yelling at him. And also yelling just never fixes anything, right? It's more about me feeling good about myself and powerful, as opposed to me yelling at him is not going to keep the venue open. So I apologize to him, and I say, it was that says more about me. It says nothing about you. I make mistakes too. I shouldn't have said that. And we have a nice little moment in the tuk-tuk, and he's very gracious about it. And so we continue to drive home, and we're talking, and he starts telling me about his family. So he's my age, he's 30, he has 2 kids and a wife, and he drives the tuk-tuk in the afternoon and evenings so that in the morning he can go to school to learn Korean. So he can become a translator and a tour guide, because there are far fewer Korean translator tour guides than there are tuk-tuk drivers. And so he'll make more money, and this will be a better way for him to support his family. He also says that his previous job before he became a taxi driver was in a restaurant where he made $20 a month. So I feel like an asshole. Because A, it's very clear now, if it wasn't clear before, that this $30 means way more to him than it does to me. But more importantly, he probably did lie to me when we like negotiated the price for the trip. Like, his job is driving tourists around, so he knows when stuff is open and closed. And I imagine that he didn't tell me the truth because he thought A, I wouldn't like go on the trip at all, or B, I would want to pay like half as much money. But the reason he did that was not because he wanted to scam me and make an easy $30. It's because he wanted to support his family. And I was reminded of this problem or hypothetical that we used to bandy about in law school when I was there. And you probably have heard this in one guise or another. The problem is, if a hungry man steals food to feed himself, is that a crime? And I always fancied myself a very charitable person and sort of was quite proud, saying, no, it's not a crime, that's justice. And of course, when that actually happened to me, which is essentially what happened when this tuk-tuk driver lied to me, I screamed at him and tried to make him feel even worse about himself than he probably already did. And then what's even worse is that the reason he lied to me in the first place is that he knew exactly how charitable I was going to be. Thanks.